Bekavich here.
Rizikowski here.
Burrell here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
If you'd all take a look at the minutes of September 11th, 2018, and let me know if there's any omissions, corrections, questions. Seven-minute meeting, there's a lot to look at there.
Shouldn't take longer.
And we set a world record here, Pat. At least a city record. But when you're satisfied with it, motion, please.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of September 11th, 2018.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Clark, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Rizikowski, aye.
Correll abstains.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Significant common council actions, Carrie?
Council approved an ordinance rezoning the property at 7518 South Howell Avenue from B4 Highway Business to I1 Institutional. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. First is public hearing, item 5A. Hold a public hearing on a proposed amendment to the 2020 Vision, a comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek that would update land use category and map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned industrial to mixed residential for the properties at 7266 and 7328 South Howell Avenue. Harry, you got that one.
I'll read the notice into the record. Official notice of Plan Commission hearing, public hearing before the Plan Commission. Purpose of this public hearing is to consider an amendment to the 2020 Vision, a comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek, as it relates to the properties at 7266 and 7328 South Howell Avenue. The hearing date is Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. The time is 6 p.m. at the Oak Creek City Hall, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154 in the Common Council Chambers. The proposed amendment would update the planned land use category in map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned industrial to mixed residential for the properties at 7266 and 7328 South Howell Avenue. Plan Commission may schedule other public meeting items or public hearings for September 25th, 2018. This hearing may begin at 6 p.m. or as soon as possible following the conclusion of any other public meeting items or public hearings. Any persons with questions regarding the proposed changes may call the Department of Community Development 414-766-7027 during regular business hours. The date of the notice is August 15th, 2018, City of Oak Creek Plan Commission. Dan Bekavich, Mayor. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak on this item, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and address the Plan Commission. This hearing is now open.
Thank you, Carrie. As Carrie stated, we will make 3 calls on the public hearing. This will be the first call. We do have a speaker.
Mr. Mayor, prior to that, maybe I could give a couple of details about the proposal.
Oh, please do.
It is a proposal to change the land use category in the comprehensive plan from planned industrial to mixed residential. The intention is for the properties to be developed in the future with workforce multifamily residential housing on the properties. It would also require future rezoning, and it would also require potentially either a PUD or conditional use permit, depending on the density of the development itself. In the area where this proposal is before you, it's in the area in red for those 2 properties. To the north, there are planned industrial and planned office categories in the comprehensive plan. Existing uses within a quarter mile of these 2 properties include a gas station, quick service restaurant with drive-through, a party supply store, and various manufacturing uses, residential, and the St. John property multi-tenant office and warehouse development to the north along Rawson Avenue. There's the Oak Creek Commerce and Industrial Park to the south, manufacturing and industrial uses, a salon and spa, bowling alley, vehicle repair center, daycare, and indoor playground to the southwest. Mixed residential would allow for the future development of a variety of residential housing types, including multifamily. Affordable mixed residential housing is needed in the area to provide housing options for employees, for the existing and new business development in the community. Along Howell Avenue, this is a bus route. There are bus stops within about half a mile, possibly less. It is isolated from existing residential neighborhoods, although there is residential in the area. It is adjacent to the North Branch Industrial Park and the Oak Creek Commerce Park as previously stated. As you'll see on the location map, these are slightly, the dimensions of these lots are slightly difficult for industrial development, which is what they're currently slated for, conforming to the surrounding area, although there are residential properties to the north that are, and also to the east. That area is something that the Plan Commission may want to consider looking at for changing in the comprehensive plan in the future as well. The state of Wisconsin Smart Growth Law requires that all local land use decisions after January 1st, 2010 be consistent with the objectives, goals, and policies contained within the comprehensive plan. Approval of these changes to the comprehensive plan would bring the plan in line with the intent and goals for future development of the properties at 7266 and 7328 South Howell Avenue. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with the proposal, there is a suggested motion for approval, but since this is a public hearing, I will now cede the floor.
Right. Thank you, Carrie. Again, this is the first call, and we do have one speaker. Janice, would you like to come up? Name and address, please.
My name is Janice Walensky. I'm at 7240 South Howell Avenue, right next door to the property that you're looking to change. And I would like to know exactly what type of housing is it that you're looking to put on that property?
At this time, it's a rezone, and multifamily would be a consideration. So multifamily basically means apartments.
So you're looking to put a bunch of people next to single-family houses when right now there's a single-family house on this property and a barn. There's not enough room on it for more than...
Again, I'm going to defer this to our planning, and they can better define what uses are there.
Well, actually, this isn't a rezone request. It's a request to change the future land use category in the comprehensive plan. So a rezone would come after that. But the request is for mixed residential, so they could actually include anything from single family up to multifamily. We do know, however, that the applicant is looking to put what is called workforce, and it would be multifamily development. However, they could include a range of a range of housing types within their development. It's at their discretion.
So is there someone that is looking to have this rezoned?
That would be the next step following the comprehensive plan change, if that were to be approved.
But who's looking to have it changed?
The applicant is here tonight.
And maybe that might be a good kind of introduction for the intention of the applicant in this matter, to give us a history of his company and what their thoughts are with respect to possible development of this site.
We'll invite the applicant up, and he can
thank
speak
you.
for a bit. If you have something else, Janice, we can bring you back up.
Thank you.
Could the applicant come up, please?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Hume On. I'm a Senior Vice President at MVAH Partners. We develop workforce and senior housing. I want to give you a quick overview of our company. So starting off, so we've been, our goal is to meet the housing needs of the community. We've developed workforce and senior housing for over 25 years. Created over 10,000 units in 16 states. And we've won numerous awards for design and for development. So this is a map just showing the coverage of our developments across the country. And here are a few examples of our development. So we can just scroll through those fairly quickly. So we really strive towards using high quality materials, quality design. We try to be contextual to the neighborhood. Here's a map of the location. So if you can see, the site is labeled on the aerial map. Just a few quick things. So on the bottom, you can see that Drexel Town Square is right there, and the site's about 1.3 miles from Drexel Town Square. It's about 2.7 miles from IKEA, but there are a number of jobs in the area that, there are many employers whose workers would qualify to live in the housing we're proposing. So preliminary proposal, we're looking at about 60 to 70 apartment units, and they're really designed for the people who already work in Oak Creek. So we're looking at about 75% would be 2-bedroom, the balance would be 3-bedroom. We're looking at a mix of market rate, and then units for households who make $46,380, and then households who make $38,650. We're looking at about 2 parking spaces per unit and at least 1 structured space per unit. And then here's just a listing of some of the employers in the area that whose workforce would be able to live in this housing. So Bladen's Farm and Fleet, less than a mile away, UPS Customer Center, Woodman's Food Market. You have the various hotels, restaurants, and retail in Drexel Town Square. You have the Marcus South Shore Cinema, the airport, IKEA, the St. Luke's South Shore Hospital. And then you have Foxconn coming online soon, and that's only 17.7 miles away. I fully anticipate, given that there are expected 13,000 jobs coming with Foxconn and the very strong schools in Oak Creek, that the housing supply will be strained by the arrival of Foxconn in Oak Creek. And I think that our development would help provide some supply, much needed supply. So that pretty much, here's just a very early site plan. It's still in progress. And again, so what we're trying to do, if you look on the west, you'll see Howell Avenue. We have the building hiding most of the surface parking, and then we're providing parking, underground parking underneath the building, and then we have some garage parking to the north of the site. So that pretty much concludes what I have to present tonight. Some early images. So we're trying to make the design contextual to what exists in Drexel Square. It's very contemporary. So we're trying to match that aesthetic. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, seeing as we're still in a public hearing, we'll make the calls. Doug, you have something?
I'll save it for the...
Okay. We'll now make the second call in a public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak? Third and final call. Okay, we will now close the public hearing and move on to consideration of that amendment to the comprehensive plan. And again, I apologize. I called it a zoning, a rezoning, and I was mistaken with that. So thank you, Carrie, for pointing that out. That's a big mistake on my part. Thank you. So questions from the commission. Fred?
Yeah, I'd like to know the size of the lot that we're talking about, or the area. Do we have that information?
Sure. So there's 2 lots actually that are involved in this, and they should actually be listed on the front page of your staff report. So it's I guess they're not.
I recall seeing it.
The site is about 2.45 acres.
4.5 acres?
2.45.
Okay.
So what kind of density are we talking about?
Well, I think, well, first of all, the question's really about the comprehensive plan, and if it should go from M1 manufacturing to I'm sorry, is it R3? Mixed use, mixed residential. So I think we should focus on that because no matter what he showed us, this is just kind of his vision. It may not fit. And again, if he doesn't get the rezone, he doesn't get it. So I think our question here, is it appropriate to keep it industrial use or mixed residential? Before we focus on, how many apartments will be on 2 acres of land. We have to decide what this 2 acres should be used for the future of Oak Creek. Did I sum that up right?
Yeah,
Doug?
I think that's a good, fair statement, Mayor. But I think also within the context of the original question, it's a fair question in the sense that, given what is kind of the irregular nature of these parcels and what would be the remnant parcels to the north, that the commission and council, I mean, if it were to consider a change from planned industrial to any land use category, whether it's mixed residential, whether it's planned business, what have you, I think that it would be challenging if we were to only change a part of that triangle, if you will, and leave the remainder as planned industrial. I think that whether it be part of any potential action with respect to amending the comprehensive plan for this application or the changes to the comprehensive plan that are forthcoming as part of the update, this kind of little pocket should be considered as a whole, and the land use should be kind of supportive of each other across that. Not that we have planned industrial, mixed residential, planned industrial, or it should be more consistent. And again, given the nature of the configuration of those lots, it just doesn't set itself up very well for planned industrial. And given that it's adjacent to some pretty substantial businesses in the North Branch Industrial Park, the Oak Commerce Park, I think it makes sense to consider workforce housing. My question to Mr. Hahn would be maybe if you could give a better definition of what workforce housing is. Not that you're voting on workforce housing, but I think it may help to inform your decision as to whether or not this is appropriate for mixed residential. I think you mentioned some income requirements for some of the businesses around here and the household incomes. Is there a minimum household income? I think, is there a differentiation between workforce housing and subsidized housing? And I think because that's important. I think my sense that workforce housing and this type of mixed residential is really supportive of the jobs that are already in the community. And so I think there's a distinction to be made there. And I just wanted to get the commission a little bit more clarity as far as what the requirements are as far as household incomes.
Well, a whole bunch was said there. I guess I'll just go back to, I think carving out this particular spot along that triangle is difficult. I think looking at it as the entire area potentially fitting into the comprehensive plan makes more sense. And then maybe a mixed use development would make more sense than, I know we're not looking at this specific. So being as I don't think that, at least I personally think that fits there, maybe looking at the bigger parcel makes more sense. And we're really not doing that tonight, Carrie. It's just that spot. So being that that's the way it's being brought to us, personally, I have a hard time approving a change, even though I think mixed multifamily may fit, but I'm not in favor of just carving that out.
And to be clear, I mean, this is a request in a public hearing in the council. The Plan Commission and the council has the discretion to amend the comprehensive plan based on information they receive at the public hearing. So, I mean, given the fact that it's only the applicant asking for these two parcels, I don't know that would preclude you from recommending to the council that these additional parcels be included in that, whether as part of this action or a subsequent action.
Okay for now? Anybody else? Jossie?
I have a question for Gary. I know in our packet it says we should also consider, and we may have touched on this a little, the remaining two properties that are to the north. So what areas should we be concerned
What I've brought up on the screen is the existing land use map in the comprehensive plan. So what you can hopefully see is that area that's in gray that kind of goes up to a point when it reaches Rawson Avenue. That's the area that we are talking about. Obviously, that it's not the entire area because we are only talking about 2 parcels within that triangle. The consideration would be in the future to determine whether or not those parcels going north of the subject parcels to Rawson Avenue should also be included, possibly even going even a little bit outside of that triangle area, but specifically within that triangle area. It's not necessarily part of tonight's consideration because that was not part of the, those areas were not part of the notice. But those would be the areas that are referenced in the staff report for future consideration, changing the comprehensive plan. And as Doug mentioned earlier, we are in the process of updating the comprehensive plan holistically. So this might be an area that we touch upon in its totality, not just this triangular area.
So the zoning today is planned industrial.
Now, the comprehensive plan future land use category is planned industrial. The request is to change it to mixed residential.
Okay. And as planned industrial, what categories fall under there versus mixed residential? What makes them different? Just the residents?
So planned industrial would be appropriate for things like manufacturing, so the M1 district or the LM1 district, the light manufacturing district. Mixed residential allows for a variety of housing types within that zoning or within a development. So that would include things like a mixed residential planned unit development where you have a variety of single family, possibly 2-family condo, up to the apartment complexes that we have seen.
So in the comprehensive plan, that entire area is planned industrial.
What's in gray is planned industrial.
Okay. What is it zoned today?
It's a variety of zoning. Bring up the zoning map here. There's RS3 and P1, which is parkland. Agricultural is to the east. And then, of course, you have the manufacturing, the mixed zoning to the north, the west, and the south.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand why we would potentially want that area mixed industrial and possibly for the future the same part of that triangle. So it sounds like it's different. The actual is different than the plan. Am I understanding correctly?
I don't think you're actually being caught on mic when you're speaking.
So I'm just trying to understand where we are today versus where we're trying to go. So the actual zoning today is different than the plan.
Correct, but the comprehensive plan is the first step in changing the zoning. So we're going sequentially.
Okay. And so today that area is zoned what again?
The comprehensive plan shows this area as being appropriate in the future for development as, planned industrial, but I'm not actually showing the zoning. So here's the zone. The zoning map is coming up right now.
Okay.
So the zoning in the area, as you can see, is RS3. To the north is P1, and then to the east is also agricultural. And then to the west and to the south, we have manufacturing, and we have a couple of other business type and industrial use or institutional uses. We also have RS3 to the northeast along Rawson Avenue. It's a mix of zoning currently. But again, what we're talking about is changing the comprehensive plan, not the zoning.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Fred? As long as I'm looking right for now. That's okay. Chris?
I'm kind of following where Pat is falling on this right
Okay, we'll go left. Start with you, Greg.
I agree with Chris and Pat right now about cutting pieces out. I just don't know if we would approve this. Would this be a catalyst for us to look deeper at changing all the industrial in that area, the planned industrial?
Probably not all of the planned industrial, but planned industrial within this triangular piece that we're talking about, which again is it's multiple parcels that make up this triangle as we're referring to. Not to the south because that's already established as industrial, not to the west because that's already established as industrial or manufacturing. So what we would be looking at is possibly extending north. Not sure if you want to take a look at extending east, but those are the areas that we would be talking about. It can happen where we go for a comprehensive plan amendment that looks at these specific parcels and then bring a proposal for extending that at a very near future Plan Commission meeting. That is a possibility.
Thanks. On anything? Brian?
Just a couple points. With the site, there is mention of that's a difficult site to build. There's some grade elevations difference on well with this. The south parcels, they just have a retaining wall up along Howell Avenue now. The north parcels are down in a hole along Howell Avenue. So significant grade changes in this route. Given the county owns the parkland to the east, the size of these lots, access to Howell, these are going to be challenging pieces of property to get something there. What's the highest and best use for that parcel? I struggle with the comprehensive plan that has it listed as industrial, planned industrial, because the sites aren't big enough. And this is 2 acres, and this is probably the highest and best piece for an industrial site would be on this land, just because it's the biggest in size without combining the other parcels. It's a difficult decision to make that and not include that rest of that point, because without the rest of that point in this parcel, you kind of got this little spot zoning in that comprehensive plan, or not zoning, but layout. So that's all.
Christina?
Just one comment that I just heard. My only concern would be access, because exactly where the parcel is located. So there will be a significant impact based on the presentation that we heard. So that would be an impact in addition to the grid elevation differences. And also, like, chunking a piece of that triangle and just doing it now would be a big concern for me as well. So I would rather wait for the entire comprehensive plan to be further looked at versus just chunking a piece of it.
Okay. I myself, again, I'm kind of side with Brian on this one. It's a difficult piece to probably foster into industrial, just given its size and what it is. Kind of acts as a buffer to the R3 zoning going forward. I don't like the idea of exactly chunking it either, but it's the question at hand. I do think eventually everything should be probably the same thing, but again, don't want to freak out the residents that we're going to go grab homes or anything like that. I do think it's probably an appropriate use to use, mixed residential there versus popping possible industrial factory on top of homes too. So either way, it's kind of a rub when something like that starts to get developed. But I guess I don't have such a bitter pill in changing the zoning, but I do agree with just about everybody here that eventually everything should kind of be that way. Access, I guess, would be a DOT question with Howell. They'd have to work that out, obviously, but that's kind of where I'm sitting. So, any other questions for the applicant, Pat?
I guess just on that last comment, and I think brought up originally, that access. So putting mixed unit multi-family of whatever type with direct access off of Howell Avenue into there just sounds, I mean, I know it'd have to clear DOT, but even if it did, I don't know that it would make any sense.
Well, would mixed residential make sense there? In other words, would you have the same concerns if it were a series of condos, or if it were side-by-sides, or if they were single-family? Or would you have the same concern if it stayed industrial and had trucking operations there, for instance.
Yeah, I think it
Those
would.
are the kinds of considerations that the Plan Commission would have to make right now.
I think a lot of those cause concern until seeing exactly how it'll work with Howell Avenue's traffic currently and trying to figure out how that would work.
But again, access, like you said, access concerns are more for site plan review, possibly even conditional use if necessary. But those would be things that the applicant would have to clear with the state.
Well, Fred?
I could go either way. It's got pros and cons, and it's a real hard decision. But I agree that if you change it, you're going to have to take that little triangle in that corner north of it.
Well, you'd have to do that in a separate act. You'd have to come back again. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct.
We'll check with the city attorney with respect to the limitations and the options that are available to the Common Council with respect to enlarging that request.
Okay. Any further discussion? Questions for staff or somebody? Go ahead, Chauncey.
So I'm just trying to understand why we would change, or the applicant would want to change the comprehensive plan versus to rezone it.
Because the comprehensive plan must change before a rezoning can be approved, because the rezone has to, or the zoning in general, has to match with what the comprehensive plan says is appropriate for future land use. If it doesn't, then we have a conflict. There are parts of the comprehensive plan that don't match the zoning currently. We know that, and we try and fix those areas, and that's part of the overall comprehensive plan amendment. But again, it's step one, and the sequence has to be comprehensive plan first, rezoning, and then it goes down to site plan review.
So is that part of the consideration, since we said for the additional properties to consider that for the future? Aren't we evaluating, or should we be evaluating the whole area then? I guess I'm...
What the Plan Commission is being asked to make a decision on tonight is a request. The request was limited to these two parcels.
Got it.
So if the Plan Commission directs staff to look at possibly changing the comprehensive plan for additional parcels, that would be something that we would have to do as a separate request, unless, of course, we get a determination from the city attorney that the council could make that extension if the Plan Commission recommends approval of this amendment.
Thank you.
So I guess the question remains, is it appropriate to buffer that with mixed-use residential
I have one more
versus
comment, actually.
industrial? Go ahead, Christina.
I just noticed from just looking at the entire site plan here that the majority of the parcels surrounding this area are either industrial or manufacturing agriculture. So even just like taking that little portion, this dry portion, to be residential beside the other northern areas of the triangle, is just a little bit of a concern as well.
The parcels that are zoned A1, which are to the east of kind of a drainage area, that actually used to be a platted residential development. It was from, I believe, the 20s, maybe even older. It never developed that way. It, I think, is all under one ownership, and I'm not sure what the status of the plat is, but it's kind of that subdivision just never came to be. Agricultural is kind of a placeholder. It was never looked at for another development. It's not uncommon for those types of things to be rezoned to A1 for consideration of a future development.
And this is part of the comprehensive plan also?
Zoning is not.
I think as an explanation for why you have the agricultural zoning there, in the comprehensive plan, this does show up as, I believe, planned office. If I'm not mistaken.
It does.
And the basis for that is these areas fall within certain noise contours from the airport, from the runway approaches, such that they heavily suggested that no single-family residential development take place there. That's why when the comprehensive plan was done back in 2002, it showed as planned office. You know, it might say that, man, that's really curious given the fact that, you know, there's no office market, and certainly not along East Rawson Avenue that deep. But it was just something that was kind of accounting to the fact that single-family residential was not appropriate in the eyes of the Common Council at that point in time when we did the comprehensive plan, given the proximity to the airport. So those are the types of things that we taking a look at as part of this comprehensive plan. What uses make sense adjacent to the airport that aren't going to necessarily be impacted by airport noise? Has that changed? And that's why you're seeing that planned office there. Not that, I don't think that there was, it wasn't a great office market in 2002. It's certainly not a great office market for those properties in 2018. But at that point in time, it was kind of the desire that not be developed as single-family residential. And looking in the crystal ball at that point in time, said, yeah, would that be a great spot for offices? Yeah, but it's certainly has some challenge in developing in that capacity.
Yeah. Questions? Carrie, you kind of just put that square there. Any particular reason you wanted to make a point on anything?
So what we're talking about is this general area, the triangular portion that goes up to Rawson Avenue as part of the planned industrial that we're talking about. Then the orange portion, that's what Doug was referring to as being planned business. And actually, I think there's a commercial portion along Rawson Avenue that shows up in red. So that's just calling the area that we're discussing.
So, no further discussion? Questions? Okay. Motion, one way or the other.
Clerk will move that the Plan Commission adopt resolution number 2018-07, amending the comprehensive plan and planned land use map to reflect the changes in land use from planned industrial to mixed residential for 7266 and 7328 South Howell Avenue following review and adoption by the Common Council.
Correll seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, no.
Johnston, no.
Grillo, aye.
Clark, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, no. Correll, aye.
Seifert, no.
Chandler, no.
It's a no.
5-4 no.
5-4 no.
5-4 no.
So this would potentially go to a public hearing given the recommendation by the Common Council. Recommendation, by the Plan Commission.
Will do. So it's going to go up to council, and they will have shot at it there.
And I'm sorry, I misspoke. It wouldn't be a public hearing before the council, would be because the public hearing was before the Plan Commission. But the council could still review that given the Plan Commission's recommendation not to change the land use map.
Correct. Claire?
Would there potentially be some legal direction to the council to expand that then, which is primarily the concern?
Make that inquiry, yes.
Okay. Thank you all for sitting through that. We will now go to 6B, review site plans for PPG for an addition to the existing parking area. Carrie.
So although there is a large parcel that is highlighted on the screen in red, what we're talking about is just the southwest corner of this parcel along 13th Street. It's where the existing parking lot is for PPG. So even though the buildings are on the parcel to the south, what we're talking about is an expansion of the parking lot. The proposal would expand that parking lot by 65 stalls, and that is needed for coverage between shift changes. This is a conceptual layout showing where those stalls would be. They are currently working on landscape plans and stormwater plans, so the configuration of these parking stalls may change slightly from what's being presented tonight, but again, staff is working with the applicant on those changes. There is a suggested motion that if the Plan Commission is satisfied with the proposal, that the Plan Commission approves the site plan submitted by Joe Ellinger, PPG and Industries for the property at 10600 South 13th Street, subject to conditions 1 through 3. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. We do have one speaker, and if the applicant would like to make a statement, feel free. So, Brian, would you like to come on up?
Brian Schrader, 910 West Finch Court. The only concerns I have is this, obviously the proposed parking is getting pretty close to 13th Street. It's not consistent with the rest of their parking. My recommendation would be to see if they could actually do an expansion of the main parking lot to push out towards their visitor parking, and then as well as that one, so they can keep a consistent parking line in accordance with 13th Street. That way you guys have the further option if you ever expand 13th Street, there's that property there, not having to destroy parking. My other concern is that 13th Street currently, I know PPG has currently no smoking on that property. If they're looking to put parking this far away from theirs, I would recommend that we actually adopt something to allow at least a few spots where their employees can go park. Currently, their employees are coming off parking on 13th Street, which is a very busy road, especially with their trucks and other traffic, off on the shoulder. And it's, in my opinion, is a safety issue as well as, just throwing all their buds away, everything like that. So if they can have some way to include the northernmost parking as possible for their smokers, that way they can at least control that stuff on site, I would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Applicant, you want to come up, Joe? We'll just need your name and address, and maybe you can address a couple of concerns Brian had.
Sure. Joe Ellinger, plant engineer at PPG Industries and 10800 13th Street. Thank you for your thoughts on the smoking, especially. I think that's a fair assessment, and it's something that I think we can consider making an improvement on. I don't think you're getting kicked off. Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. I think that's something that we could even if this parking lot goes forward, that's something that we can consider with for our neighbors. As far as the suggestion of moving it to another location, I'm not sure what location he was talking about, but we do have wetlands and physical requirements, physical barriers, and some of the other areas off of that parking lot. So this was the one that was deemed the most easily accessible from a construction standpoint. We are, like Carrie said, we are working with stormwater planners to come up with the right way to be able to address the stormwater runoff on that small little parcel. And this is necessary because of some good news is that we're growing, so that's a positive thing.
Questions? Fred, you still looking?
Yeah, I just have a question. Carrie, do we have a map that we can show what's north of that parking lot in that area?
There's open land north of that parking lot.
There's no housing right nearby.
Not on they own a large piece of property. What you're
Right.
looking at right now is like 50 acres. So everything north of that is open land that they own.
Okay.
And then there are residential portions surrounding there. Let me zoom out here so you can see, but
It's kind of on, I thought maybe your last.
yeah, to the north. You can see along Finch Lane and
Yeah. Towards the top, Fred.
Yep. Okay.
and again, we're talking about the southwest corner.
Thank you.
Christina?
Yes, so actually, Carrie, I heard you saying the reason for that expansion is different shifts, but then I heard the applicant saying that you're growing business. So my question is, would that increase the number of trucks traveling to this facility?
So the project that is going on right now is actually a IT project, and so we have a lot of visitors from outside that are coming in, and that's what's causing this. Our production is slowly growing, but it's not anything of significance that is going to increase the number of trucks on the road.
Anyone else? Chelsea? Pat? Nothing? Chris? Greg, go ahead.
Just one question. The colored picture with the yellow parking lot addition on there does kind of make it look like it's close to 13th Street. Looking at the actual measurements on the plans, that does leave enough room, correct, for any right-of-way if they do redo 13th Street and add sidewalks down in that portion of it.
The minimum required setback in parking for manufacturing zoning districts, although it may not look like it, but just given the scale of that facility, it's 40 feet. So, I mean, it should, and I don't know what the ultimate right-of-way is for 13th Street or whether it's been acquired by Milwaukee County for that, but typically that should present plenty of space to do that.
Actually, the parking setback is 30 feet.
Since the PUD, 30 or 40 feet, I believe it's 40, but.
This is showing 30 feet from their area of disturbance as where the pavement is going. Right.
Brian.
I believe that the right-of-way through there is 40 feet. The setback from the right-of-way to the parking lot is 30 feet.
No other, you got something, Fred?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, motion.
Seifert moves that the Plan Commission approves the site planning submitted by Joe Enklinger, PPG Industries, for the property at 10,600 South 13th Street with the following conditions. 1, that landscaping plans incorporating perimeter and interior landscaping elements in conformance with code requirements are submitted for review and approval to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of building permit applications. 2, the stormwater plans are submitted for review and approved by the engineering department prior to the submission of building permit applications. 3, that all reviewed plans, site, building, landscape, and so forth, are submitted in digital format for review and approved by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of the building permit applications.
Chandler, second.
Roll call.
And I.
Johnston, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Zagowski, aye.
Kroll, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great, thank you very much. And Joe, maybe if you can get together with Brian, that those do seem like some pretty serious concerns. I did not realize that. Makes sense you can't smoke on the property, but we want to make sure everybody's safe and neighbors are not being subjected to cigarette butts and things like that. Totally reasonable. Thank you. Item 6C is a plan review for an addition to an existing building, 7195 South 1st Street. Carrie?
The proposal is for a 12,246 square foot addition to the west side of that existing building that would be used for a wholesale bakery called Croissant, etc. Melody Cookies, which is the existing tenant in the building, would remain. And the screen right now shows the site plan for the existing building. And this is the proposal. What I'm showing you includes the landscaping. There are some additions to the landscaping, but the existing drifts and there are some existing trees would remain or be replaced in kind. It appears from the plans that all setback requirements have been met. We did have a question regarding the setback for the floodplain and the floodway in that area. However, this proposed addition does not impact that at all. There is parking currently on the property on the east and within the fenced area. Applicant has informed me that they are actually going to keep the angled parking that is existing on the east rather than changing it to 90-degree parking. There was a little bit of an issue with code compliance with aisle width there. So that's actually not going to change. So this plan will be revised a bit. The minimum parking requirements for manufacturing, processing, and fabrication operations are 1 stall for every peak shift employee. Because there are going to be 17 employees at the largest shift, which is between 7:30 and 4:30 p.m., that would be 17 required parking stalls. What they are providing, even though this would change with the angled parking, would be 24. So they're in excess of what they are required to have. There's also room for expansion, so they may add parking in the future, possibly behind the fenced area. If there are any changes that would be required for landscaping purposes, we will work with the applicant to make those changes. However, there are no concerns at this time. And what's on the screen right now are the building elevations. Now, they are proposing to use metal panels, which are not allowed in the code as primary building materials. However, what they're proposing is to match the existing building. So there would be a combination of metal wall panels, painted CMU, and a metal roof. Again, it's all to match what's already there. So staff is supportive of the proposed plans as they are presented. Additionally, where they are proposing to add on to the building, it's not within the visible perimeter, so that 25% maximum as part of decorative portion of the building doesn't really apply. And as was included in the plans, all rooftop mechanical units are going to be behind that pitched area of the roof in the center, so you won't be able to see that from the road. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with the proposal, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission approves the site plan submitted by Mark Carollo of Croissant, etc. Corporation for the property at 7195 South 1st Street, subject to conditions 1 and 2. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. We'll open it up for questions. Let's go left this time. Pick on Brian. Brian, anything?
Nothing for me.
Dawn? Christina? Greg?
No.
Chris?
Nothing.
Pat?
All good.
Fred?
Good with me.
And Chauncey? Looks good to me. I'm glad to see you guys are expanding. As far as metal panels go, Carrie summed it up greatly. I'm familiar with the building. Back in the day, I actually was contracted to do work in there when previous owners. So glad to see you guys are growing. So, motion.
Carol moves the commission approves the site plan submitted by Mark Carollo, Croissant, etc. Corp. for the property at 7195 South 1st Street with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all revised plans, site building, landscaping, etc. are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit application.
Guzikowski seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Aye.
Secret eye.
Chandler, aye.
Good luck, guys. Hey, just a little heads up. Last week we did the Peak Behind Oak Creek where businesses open their doors. You have one of the more interesting businesses that nobody really knows about. You might want to consider that next year. Great. Thank you. Item D is consideration of a rezone for M&M Truck Center to rezone the properties at 8940 and 9840 and 9872 South 27th Street from M1 Manufacturing and OO Mixed Use Office Overlay to M1 Manufacturing. Carrie.
So the proposal, if you'll recall, comes on the heels of a request for a conditional use permit for one of the properties, and that was 9840 South 27th Street. So the initial request was restricted to just that parcel. However, in looking at the proposal, staff came to the conclusion that it should probably include both of the properties owned by the applicant to make it more consistent. The proposal in itself is to rezone these properties so that they are actually removed from the overlay district. Now, you'll recall from the staff report that staff is actually asking the Plan Commission to consider whether or not staff should look at further reductions of the overlay district in the area, specifically the properties to the north. The properties to the south we feel are at this time appropriate for that overlay district. However, to the north we do still have some manufacturing uses, and that overlay district may not make sense in that area. The conditional use permit was put on hold at a previous Plan Commission meeting pending the outcome of this rezone request, so this is why it's before you right now. The comprehensive plan shows properties in the area generally between Corporate Preserve Drive and the Oak Creek, as you can see on the screen, that floodway area to the north. Those have been identified for planned industrial. So the overlay district has a conflict there, as we previously mentioned in a meeting. The existing parcels in the immediate area are also zoned for manufacturing uses. This is right in part of South Branch. So there is a suggested motion that staff has presented for the Plan Commission that if the Plan Commission agrees, that they recommend to the Common Council that the properties at 9840 and 9872 South 27th Street be rezoned from M1 PUD manufacturing and OO mixed use office overlay district just to M1 PUD manufacturing after a public hearing. And if you could also please direct staff as to whether you feel we should be looking at additional parcels to possibly bring back for rezone consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. This one gets a little tricky. We had it once before because there's actually an overlay district along with zoning. So, questions? Well, I'm sure Doug and Carrie will be able to clear it up, but you're probably going to have some questions on this one. So, I'll give you guys a second to look it over, or if somebody wants to start, just let me know.
Okay, I do have a question. I'm just trying to understand if it's already M1, why do we want to change it?
We're not changing the underlying zoning. What we're asking is for the commission to consider taking the overlay district off of these two parcels. So the M1 PUD zoning would remain. It would no longer be in the overlay district.
So what area is the overlay?
The overlay district is shown in pink on the screen. It's that rectangular piece that is adjacent to 27th Street for multiple parcels. Doesn't show the entirety of the overlay district. However, this is the area it covers.
Mike, maybe Doug could fill you in on a little bit on the history of the overlay and how it came about along 27th Street. Sorry about this, Doug, but I think it might clear some things up.
Sure. The office overlay district in this area is one of, I believe, 4 different overlay districts that were adopted as part of the 27th Street area planning in conjunction with the city of Franklin back in, I know I'm getting this date wrong, I'm guessing probably 2006, 2007 in that neighborhood, in recognition of what everyone thought would be a very vibrant corridor and one that offered a great deal of potential, and it still does. The timing of development along the corridor certainly has been challenging given the events that occur within the economy immediately subsequent to the adoption of the overlay districts. But the thought was that, especially with respect to the office overlay, that we would transition, where possible, away from some of the older more storage and outdoor storage and display and what have you, intensive industrial uses towards that, which was more office oriented. And it probably was more prevalent and directed at those areas which were greenfields and didn't have a lot of investment already on the property. Certainly a lot more challenging where you have existing bricks and mortar that would need to transition over to that use. And it's not an easy transition to make from a manufacturing and 1960s style manufacturing to an office district. So certainly some challenges that were incorporated there. This request and the thinking that's going behind it does not throw out the overlay district. What it does, it recognizes the existing realities of those bricks and mortar businesses within the South Branch Industrial Park, and at least leads us to believe that there's some merit towards reevaluating the office overlay district in light of where it makes sense given existing development versus greenfield development. For instance, certainly the Liberty Property Trust buildings south along Corporate Preserve Drive are suitable candidates and have been developed for offices. So we're not suggesting that there is no room for offices along South 27th Street. We are, again, providing some insight as to the fact that it will be challenging to make a transition from the types of brick and mortar businesses that are within the South Branch Industrial Park to an office overlay under the standards that are in the code. And we want to strive to work with the property owners to make that transition, but at the same time to not allow those uses which are within the base zoning districts certainly causes some questions and challenges for those people who own those properties.
Doug, I hope that added a little bit to the understanding.
Yes, that did. And I have another question
Go
based
ahead.
on that. So I want to make sure I'm understanding. So the entire pink area is the office overlay district. However, our focus is just the red area, which is the office overlay. We want to change only that to manufacturing today.
The pink area is most of the office overlay district. It actually goes further south than what's shown on the map here. But yes, the two areas that are highlighted in red are the two properties that are owned by the applicant that are being requested to be changed out of the office overlay district. And what staff is asking for the Plan Commission to possibly direct us to do is look at taking those additional properties to the north. So I think that's two properties straddling South Branch Boulevard, to take those out of the office overlay district as well, because those are being used currently for industrial manufacturing uses. The one that's immediately north is a self-storage facility, and it is part of the South Branch Industrial Park. So those would be the areas that staff could see a nexus for removing that overlay district from those properties specifically. And again, as Doug mentioned, those properties south have actually been developed with some office uses, so the potential for those properties to the south to further develop that way, we think still has merit, so the overlay district would not be changed in those areas.
Thank you.
Brad, anything? Pat? Still looking?
Not yet, still looking.
Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
So this does fall in my district, and I think I appreciate that the staff is looking at this because I think we have many properties, as we've mentioned, that are already there. So now it's like, what do you do with some of these buildings there? So by removing this in these areas, as I understand it, it makes it less restrictive potentially for what they'd like to do at some of these properties. Now, that doesn't mean they still don't have rules to follow, but I just want to, it gives us an opportunity to make things happen along that area, which is a positive thing. I just don't want it to be too loose in that we're doing, that we don't have any recourse in managing and maintaining what this all looks like along here, because we don't want it to turn into a junkyard over there. Does that make sense?
Correct, and I think if I'm understanding you correctly, I mean, the underlying district is a manufacturing district, so we're not losing any controls that are afforded to us by that M1 zoning district. And certainly conditional use permits would come into play as needed based on what would be proposed. And then the other portion of that is we're removing a conflicting overlay district potentially. So I don't think that there's really a removal of potentially restrictions per se. It's just a conflicting set of regulations.
Yes, and also I want to thank Carrie I've reached out to her a few times in the last few weeks regarding it, so thank you for your help and guidance.
Christina, you had something?
Yeah, I just, so you mentioned that the southern parcels in pink are not being looked at to remove that overlay district, correct?
We're not considering that, or we hadn't considered that at this time. What we were thinking was, again, removing those two parcels to the north potentially right now, if the Plan Commission directs staff to look at that. Again, to the south, as previously mentioned, as part of Corporate Preserve Drive, those areas have been developed with office, so there still might be some merit. There might be some tweaking once the comprehensive plan holistically gets changed, but we're thinking in the immediate future to kind of look at this area specifically.
I was just going to say, why can't you, while you consider this as part of the being effectiveness, just to kind of look at the whole area and remove some restriction in being like working with those property owners to be able to develop it and even open for other incoming business to do that versus coming to us here one more time to relook into that. It's just a thought, not more.
Brian?
The overlay district extends how far south and how far north from here.
The extent of this particular overlay district, these are the northern boundaries. The southern boundaries go to at least Elm, I think.
Okay, so basically like the floodway to the north is a northerly limit?
Yes.
Okay. I just thought it might be an issue if we start creating gaps in that overlay, but I think we should look at the properties to the north of this parcel as well, and then continue everything to the south.
We can take a look at whether or not the southern portion should change during the whole review of the comprehensive plan.
Makes sense, rather than just having a piece in the middle of it that's removed from it.
Right. And again, those areas would have to be rezoned if we're going to take them out of the overlay district, but at least the comprehensive plan will give us an idea of what we would think would develop along that southern corridor. It would inform our decision for moving forward with rezone.
Aren't they still remaining as a manufacturer, though?
Not all of the properties are manufacturing zoning. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
So there's more considerations.
Oh,
That's why we
okay.
were saying limited to this area right
Okay,
now.
I misunderstood that.
And not to confuse things, there's also this, it's also happening on the west side on 27th Street, right? The Franklin side. As far as.
The Franklin does have their own overlay districts on their side of 27th Street.
On?
Question, does Franklin, are they going through these same changes?
I think on a case-by-case basis, their rezoning is kind of like ours. You look at what a proposal is, and then you make a decision accordingly. I don't know if they're taking a holistic look at their overlay districts. I haven't been keeping up with that, but they do have things that are going on their side of the street, too.
And their uses certainly are different than those that occur on the east side of the street. So it's difficult to make that comparison as far as the individual actions or requests that each of the councils will be faced with. But I think it's we're still invested in the corridor, and with making good development happen in the corridor. I guess one of the things that we want to be clear is we want to make sure that we have policies that encourage investment rather than disinvestment. And I think that this had the potential in certain situations to encourage disinvestment, given that it really did remove from the spectrum a lot of the things that could be done with existing properties.
Greg? Back to you, Pat. Okay. I was here when the overlay went in, and it was kind of a generic blanket that went over everything, and this is one of the things that kind of fell through the cracks. I do like the idea of the overlay having consistency, and I would ask staff to look at it going north. This particular property, it is an existing building, correct? And it's going to be used for a truck center. I guess my question would be, if we remove the overlay, obviously there were things in the overlay. I'd like to maintain the front of the building with, not having trucks or what have you. Would we still have that within us to, restrict that?
That would be my concern.
Yes.
Like just what Chris said, basically.
Yes, if there's an appropriate conditional use permit, which again, the Plan Commission put on hold that review of that conditional use permit for the proposed trucking business. Part of that would allow for the Plan Commission to say you must park all of your trucks behind a fence, it must be screened, it must be on the east side of the property.
We could take care of that.
Under the conditional use parameters, yes, you can still restrict that.
Yeah,
we still have setback requirements and things like that in the M1 district, so all of that still applies.
Just want to make sure they ain't stacking cars in the front, what have you.
I mean, there's already existing parking there, like vehicle parking,
Yeah,
customer
I
parking.
understand that. I guess I want it to look more like a business front, and the business
Right.
is actually going on in the back, so to speak. Mike, anything? It's been a quiet night for you. That's good, though. Okay, anything else? If nothing else, motion, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sure, please, I'm sorry.
I wanted to make sure that I obviously wanted to attend, and I really appreciate it. That's all I'm going to say.
Just name and address.
Joe
please.
Sincata, I'm the attorney for the trucking business, and also Mr. Radeta is here. And we did. You guys had the history. We came with the conditional use. The idea was to rezone, and that's why this came forward. We worked very well with staff. It's a pleasure, and I wanted to compliment them. And the conditional use is the next step, and so we'll manage with the M1 regulations and then the conditional use on top of that, we should be fine.
Oh, great.
So, in my understanding, I'm sure you'll probably take us through the process, but I think this now goes to council if you guys approve.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping you will. And so we'll take it there. But thank you very much, and thanks to staff. So that's all I had.
Our staff is the best in the land, without a doubt. So.
If there are questions, we're here.
No, they really find solutions. They do. So, if nothing else, motion, I believe.
Seifert moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the properties at 9840 and 9827 South 27th Street be rezoned from M1 manufacturing and OO mixed-use office overlay district to M1 manufacturing after a public hearing.
Crowell seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Thank you, guys. Again, thanks to our staff. Thanks to Tim back there, as always, with the IT stuff. Very nice job. It's great to hear when the businesses come in and compliment our staff. It really shows off our strengths there. So, the only announcement I have that I can think of is the farmers market continues. We're getting to the fall season. Anything, Dawn?
Nope, 4 weeks left.
4 weeks left, so if you haven't been there, take advantage of it because you don't want to think about what you missed all winter long. So get out there. Motion to adjourn.
Carrillo moves to adjourn at 7:11.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Thank you and good night.